Dante, do you buy this argument that that no one has been harmed yet, so you can't stop an executive order, even if the order might be unconstitutional? I
do. The Supreme Court, they're going to operate correct procedurally. They have to do that. They can't be swayed by kind of the hot topic of the moment, which this seems to be. But Donald Trump and his administration hasn't implemented anything yet. And that's what they said. Essentially, they called his bluff and said, you haven't done anything. You put this in an executive order, but nothing happened. So we're not in a position to rule on it yet. We know that what he said in this order regarding this lawsuit was that if you are sending out voter ballots through the mail, it has to be a person approved by the federal government, by Trump's administration, either by Trump's administration sending states the list or states sending the administration the list for approval. And if an official sends a ballot to someone that's not on that list, they can be criminally prosecuted. But none of that has happened yet. If it gets to that point or close to that point, the Supreme Court said, come back to us. You'll then have the right to challenge it because you'll have standing. And I tell you now that the Supreme Court will not allow that to stand. They're going to follow the Constitution and say you cannot regulate mail-in ballots or any voting rules through executive order. It has to come through Congress.
Charles?
Well, yes, I think that is correct. However, the Supreme Court knows very well that they're up against the clock, right? Some mail-in ballots are already being sent out to service members. The idea that you're operating too early, the Supreme Court could have said that this is too close to this election, that it cannot be dealt with in this cycle. They could have said that. That is not what they said. They said you're too early. Somehow, in the meantime, in the 70 days we have left, while this mechanism starts to work already, you have to come back to us while the voting is happening and then file another suit. That is crazy. They know that's happening. That is the kind of the shell game that the Supreme Court is playing here with democracy.
I mean, part of that was addressed by the Supreme Court. They did say that, and you talk about the dissent led by Justice Jackson.
Exactly.
She said that you can show standing because you can show that, one, you may have to spend money. If this order is implemented close to election, the amount of money you would have to spend to regulate it or to make it happen. And also the criminal prosecution that you could potentially face could put you in a position now where you say, well, there is some harm to me now. But again, nothing has been implemented. So the Supreme Court will be operating off of speculation.
She also added that this ruling from the majority needlessly injects chaos and uncertainty into the upcoming midterm elections. It's also worth noting that the Trump allies are viewing this as a huge victory, even though, as Dante points out, first of all, it's still not in effect, and secondly, it doesn't really say anything about the merits of the actual executive order. Mike Lee says Congress must still pass the Save America Act to secure future elections. We should have passed it months ago. Thankfully, President Trump is making up for what we haven't done. So he's suggesting that this executive order is a stopgap measure to implement parts of the Save America Act that Congress hasn't done. But again, it does not seem that that's what the court is saying here.
I agree with you that this was a procedural assessment. However, I also believe that the lower court judges acted irrationally based on the policy concerns that Justice Jackson identified. This majority on this court isn't interested in the policy. They're interested in the statutory or constitutional elements that are in operation. None of that yet is present for them to opine upon.
I would just say they're not interested yet, because eventually they might have to deal with this. And it's going to be a pretty up and down question of, can you, as an executive of the leader of the executive branch, sign your name on a piece of paper and regulate elections, which seems to contradict the Constitution.
But that's
we'll see what happens with the final ruling.
I'm not disagreeing with you. Just a second. I'm not disagreeing with you.
But that
they
is
are
not what
dealing,
may come before the court either.
I'm just saying they're not
But that
dealing
may never
with,
come before the court.
And that's what their point was.
My point is they did not deal with that at all because, to your point, they dealt with the procedural
it was a clunky ruling.
But there is a substantive issue here with the executive order.
They didn't rule on the merits, but to disagree with Justice Jackson, it didn't really inject chaos because nothing actually changed. The court temporarily granted to the Trump administration that, yes, you could compile this citizenship list and send it out to the states, but the Postal Service doesn't actually have to reject any ballots that come back with names that aren't on that list. So it's basically saying you're kind of stuck. You don't really get to do anything with this ruling for the time being. But zooming out here, non-citizens voting, which is really why this executive order was instituted in the first place, is already illegal. The problem is that President Trump does not actually have the power to prevent non-citizens from voting. A lot of people think that he does, so this is almost like a moot and irrelevant battle that he's fighting. He has the power to prosecute people who are found to have engaged in illegal voting or aiding and abetting it, but he cannot stop it. Why do you think he's fighting so hard for the SAVE Act? It's because he doesn't actually have the authority right now.
Well, I wonder, I wonder why is he fighting so hard for the SAVE Act when there are so very few non-citizens that are voting at all? It's actually sort of an imaginary problem, and so many Americans have real problems right now making rent, buying groceries.
I think the integrity of our election system is worth fighting for.
He is actually spending most of his time undermining our election system from where I sit.
It's very sound. I think another thing that's addressed here, and I think you brought this up, is the Supreme Court is telling these district court judges, stop doing these injunctions.
Right.
Stop jumping in when the president of the United States says something or does something and saying, in my district, I'm going to decide that none of this can happen across the United States. I think the Supreme Court, in its last recent couple of decisions, has decided that we're not going to allow these district court judges to have the authority over presidential decisions. They want to keep that power for themselves.
I don't know that I agree with that, because I think that the procedural issue that they're addressing is timing. And on Friday, when the USPS put in place the rule, it set the ball in motion for this to actually be implemented. So it's only a matter of time before they get to a point where they try to implement this, in which case it would be ripe for a challenge, and it would have to still go through the same judicial process.
But I think they're going to want them to come back to the Supreme Court, not rely on
I agree with that.
Come back while they're voting.
The lower court will still have to rule on the merits of a challenge to this.
But we don't know what the implementation will look like. The Postal Service actually has a statute more than 100 plus years old that says it can't be a party to fraudulent activity. You can't send counterfeit, you can't send drugs, you can't engage in cheating your neighbor by using the mail system. There is a robust anti-fraud position, and it is possible.
You prove that there's fraud.
It is.
I mean, that's the problem, is that they have to prove that there is fraud.
That they limit what this new rule does so that it focuses on fraud prevention.
Listen,
what fraud? I want to know what fraud.
That is already in the book, so I don't understand what the executive order would be about.
This isn't a win for Republicans because essentially the Supreme Court said the president hasn't done anything with this yet. So I don't think if they should look at this as a win.
No, I'm just going to Abby's point that we already know it's a preordained outcome of what happens then.
That's literally not what I said. I did not say that. All I said was that the point at which this becomes ripe for challenge is perhaps coming very soon.
Yes.
Because they are moving forward
but it
with
may
a process that would allow them to challenge it. And I would, to this point of fraud, first of all, you're right. It's already illegal to vote if you are not a citizen. It's already illegal to use the mail system in a fraudulent way. Those things are already illegal. The Trump administration is trying to claim that there is such widespread fraud that this executive order is necessary. They put out a whole bunch of claims earlier this year, including that in Nevada, there were 278,000 non-citizens registered to vote in 4 states. And in Nevada, they said there were 15,000. Well, it turns out they can't prove that. It turns out that they've identified only 185 potential non-citizens in the state so far. So that's why people have a lot of skepticism about these claims that were made a few months ago, because they put out these massive numbers to try to make it seem way more common, and they have yet to back any of them up.
But that's
I'm sorry.
With prosecutions, with proof, they haven't backed any of them.
That's a PR argument.
That's not a PR argument. It's not a PR argument.
That's not a PR argument. There are facts underneath this. Even those cases, they said they were on the rolls, but they didn't say that any of those people actually voted illegally.
Well, they also haven't proven that those people are actually non-citizens.
So none of that has been exactly. And then the Heritage Foundation actually keeps a record of convictions of non-citizens voting. Since 1982, they have it's not 44, it's less than 100 cases of people charged with voting illegally.
And convicted. And convicted.
And convicted. And that's 44 years, right?
And convicted.
That's 44 years.
How much IRS invasion has there been?
And 44 years, less than 100. In those 44 years, there have been over 1.3 billion votes just for the president. That's not including state, local. That is not including Congress. That is not including off-year elections. That is just for the president. That is not a problem. The idea that people are arguing that this is a problem is a lie. Is a furtherance of the lie.
Do you think there should be a uniform standard, though, ensuring verification of
I don't think there should be national elections. I do not think that elections should be nationalized, which is what Trump is pushing for. I think the state should have it.
I'm with you. Democrats actually proposed this idea first.
The Constitution
Yes, but the
gives the
problem is that not all the states actually do require uniform verification, and so this is trying to address that.
Here's my question.
Uniform verification, not no verification.
This is the thing that our president should be spending his time, effort, and energy.
I push back on that. That is not the basis.
Do you think this is the thing that most people are talking about at their
That
dinner table
is
right
not
now?
the basis for whether it is illegal or unconstitutional. And that is the reason why, if a new challenge comes and these kinds of policy arguments are made, the court is going to allow this to be implemented.
There's no way in the world they would. I can tell you this.
No.
There's no way in the world that the court would allow an executive order to override what's in the Constitution. The states have the power. And you talk about needing evidence and to back it up legally, you still have to show some kind of proof that this is happening, even for it to become an issue.
Counselor.
He's making this an issue.
Counselor.
That doesn't need to be
You're
addressed.
presenting facts that are not in evidence. We do not know if this regulation is going to do what you just described. There are things that
the description is that the federal government has to approve who the individual states
they've already pulled back from that.
The other fact that's not in evidence is that there is no fraud.
Hold on, Horace. You're suggesting that the executive order, as it's written, they've backed away from parts of it, and so that should be sufficient. The executive order, as it's written, basically says the states or somebody. There's going to be a list. The Postal Service is going to determine whether people are on that list, and then they are going to approve or deny ballots from being sent or received through the mail system. That is the crux of the challenge.
And really, though, when we get the zoom out, though, what does this do to voters? Does this instill trust?
Well, listen,
the court isn't reviewing the executive order.
Hold on.
The court is reviewing
Horace,
what
you keep
is the
fighting
USPS doing.
You keep fighting the last battle. We already established that the Supreme Court ruling doesn't address the merits of the case, but what Dante was talking about is the second iteration of this. Eventually, this will come to the merits.
It won't be about the executive order, is what I'm saying.
Eventually,
it will
Horace,
be about the implementing rules.
What you're saying is he created an executive order, but he's not going to have an executive order.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
But that's what
I don't know what you're saying.
I am saying that the USPS has already gone to the district court and said, notwithstanding this executive order, here are the things we're actually planning to do. And we have heard your complaints and we have modified our plans accordingly.
Oh, okay. So the USPS has single-handedly modified the president's executive
Just
order.
read the case.
Well, look, I think Dante is correct that eventually, when we get to the merits of this case, we will have to deal with some of these substantive issues about the constitutionality of an executive order that seeks to regulate voting nationwide in this country.